runs about here, right through, I think, Colombia there, and cuts Africa in half. Oh, thank you. And so that's where we went. We took the flight from Columbus to Dallas to Lima, Peru, and then you have to fly into Cusco because there's no direct flights into Cusco. Then on the way back, we flew through Miami. But altogether, about 2.5 hours to Dallas, 6.5 hours to Lima, and then an hour-and-a-half flight to Cusco. This is the church building in Cusco. This is mostly the church, but they're actually watching a soccer game in this picture. But it's probably the best picture of the church building that I had. The lighting actually sits above these panels here, and so it gives it a really strange glow when the lights come down through the ceiling, but they got their snacks laid out here. I think these are the Peruvian soccer or football team's colors, and so I think they're watching a game. These couples here are the missionaries that are stationed in Cusco. So they have a little bit different model than some that we've seen so far, and they have a team. So they have 3 couples that are down there full time, and then they have 2 interns. And so I'll introduce you to them. These guys are, I'd kind of say, heading it up right now. Ryan and Sarah Davis, and we connected with them pretty well. We had dinner with them, talked to them quite a few nights. They've been down there for 5 years. The church there, well, I'll give you the history of the church a little bit later, but they've been there for 5 years, and they seem like a really good couple. This is another couple, Mitchell and Rachel. They've been down there a little bit less. I think 3 or 4 years they've been down there. Bethany Iverson. She's been down there for a couple years, and the other couple I don't have a picture of because they were kind of the errand runners, and so we saw them a little bit more sporadically than these couples. But she's petting this dog. That's its tongue hanging out right there. Nice Latin American dog. Now, you're probably really interested as to why this picture's on the board. And the reason for that is this is the first thing I saw when I got off the airplane in Cusco. And I thought, no, not down here too. And what I found out was that this is not what you think it is, as far as what we're introduced to when we see the rainbow flag most places. This is actually the municipal flag of Cusco. And so you see rainbow flags down there everywhere, which really throws you, and you kind of got to get used to it. But luckily, it was not the American style. A couple just interesting facts here about the city. It's the capital of the Incan Empire, so there's a lot of Incan history there if you like history. From 13th century to 1532 when Francisco Pizarro came and basically wiped everybody out and did his Spanish thing. The weather in Cusco is really, really nice. Now it sits just about on the equator, so you think it'd be really, really hot, but it's not because the elevation is so high. I have the elevation on the next slide, but it sits at about 12,000 feet above sea level. And so it's very, very cool. Every day, the climate's very consistent throughout the year. It's about 70 degrees every day. Humidity doesn't get over 50 degrees, or 50%. And at night, it gets down to about 50. So in my opinion, that's like perfect weather. And it's sunny all the time, other than the rainy season. We were there right at the tail end of the rainy season. So the weather's beautiful. Languages, they speak Spanish. A lot of the older, like 60 and up, older ladies, and mostly ladies, speak a dialect called Quechua, which is an old Incan language. But Spanish is spoken everywhere, pretty much. Religion, primarily Catholic, just like a lot of Latin America, that Spanish influence. Catholic, not always devoted Catholics, but Catholic in name, at least, and in family. Per capita GDP nominal, so household income, this is an estimate, but about $7,000. So these are not people who have a whole lot of money. And so we were there on a medical campaign, and so you could see why they would need that. I was told by someone who knew that for well-to-do people who have good established jobs, there's health care, just like it is here for many of us who have jobs. But the middle class, which is the majority of the people who don't have those good jobs, there's nothing. But then again, for the really, really poor people, there's kind of a government subsidized health care. And so all the people that are stuck in the middle, making the average wage, don't have a whole lot of access to healthcare. And so there's definitely a need for what we were doing. The current church has been there about 10 years. It was planted 10 years ago by these missionaries. Most of them are from Tennessee, Alabama area. And the church is it's interesting because it's no longer what I'd call a church plant necessarily, like an early stage new church, but it's got about 100 members. They have 2 services, and they meet in that building. But it's kind of a church that's maturing. It's kind of the process that you want to see happen with a church plant, right? To kind of grow beyond just where everything's dependent on the missionary families, and where if the missionary families left, the whole church would fall apart. They're kind of growing past that, and they're trying to develop deacons and elders, and they've got men who are preaching in the congregation now, and their hope is that in 3, 4, 5 years, they're actually going to be able to pull out of the church entirely and let the Cuscoians, or whatever you call them, run and operate the church internally by themselves, which I think is a tremendous accomplishment. And so looking about 15-year plan total, really. Meg and I, when we were flying out of Columbus, I don't know why I have another map. This is some of the money. So the picture's a little overexposed, I guess, but they use their money's called soles or soles, and just like a lot of Latin American money, it has a distinguished individual on the front from their history, and this is Machu Picchu. So every dollar bill or all their paper money has different landmarks on it. This is actually the city center. So this sits right in the middle of Cusco. Cusco is kind of the main area, and this is the cathedral, Spanish influence, obviously. And there's a couple cathedrals in the square. There's another one over here, and there's another one that you actually can't see. But some beautiful architecture, and these roofs are red tile, like red clay tile. And so the city it's very uniformed in the way that it looks, and it's probably the most beautiful place that we've been to, at least as far as mission work. Aesthetically, it's just a very good-looking city because of that uniformity. And it sits down. They might have a picture, but there's this zoom in kind of the same area. It sits down in a valley. And so there's mountains that surround it, and it's the Andes Mountains that surround it. And one interesting thing was, and one question that I kind of had before we went there was, are these countries as heavily evangelized, missionary-wise, as a lot of the Central American countries? Because I know a lot of groups that have gone to Central America in that area as mission teams or short-term missions, long-term missions. And one thing that Ryan, one of the missionaries, told me was that it's not nearly as evangelized as Central America because just the Andes area in general has not attracted as many missionaries because, in part, it's a little bit harder to get to. It's a little bit more expensive to get to. The terrain's just a little bit more difficult, and so not as many missionaries have come. This picture is actually right when we arrived. We found this, and it was... If you're familiar with Rio de Janeiro, you probably know that giant festival that they have every year, and they all dress up and they dance in the streets and do a bunch of who knows what. But this is a little bit tamed down, but this is their version of that. And you see a bunch of people here who have like white specks on them, and the reason is because what they do during this festival is they all meet in the town square and they throw water balloons at each other and spray each other with shaving cream. So we found ourselves caught in the middle of this, and I got a little bit of that picture. I actually got tackled on this stone walkway here because it was really slippery and sprayed down with shaving cream by a couple people. I knew, I just couldn't avoid them. There are too many. So these are the mountains that surround the city, and you see they often put like designs or words or messages up on the hills that kind of like giant street art. You better like stairs if you go to Cusco. I missed a slide, but I'll just summarize it. So it sits at 12,000 feet, and you think, you hear of mountain climbers who have to acclimate to the elevation, and I was like, yeah, that's probably not real. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not going to have a hard time breathing. It's not a lie. You'll be just walking down the street, and you'll be winded because the oxygen level is just so low. And there's stairs everywhere because it's, in the mountains. You have to walk upstairs to get almost anywhere. And so you're huffing and puffing no matter where you go. And Megan and I decided one night that it was a good idea to climb 9 flights of stairs to our hotel room. And it was like I just ran 5 miles. I about lost a lung because the air is so thin there and it's so hard to breathe. They have an open-air market called St. Peter's, similar to some other ones that you've seen. This is meat, like sausages hanging from this area. Any pork for anyone there? Pig's head. So here, now we'll get to our medical mission now that we've gone over the city a little bit. This campaign, I didn't know exactly what we were getting into when we first went, but this campaign is put on by several congregations in Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama. I think there's some Mississippi guys there as well. And you'll be able to see kind of the organization, which it is one of the best organized campaigns that I've ever been on. And I've heard about a lot of medical missions where they just kind of go and they set up, random shop and they hope people show up. Well, this isn't one of those. This is a very well organized campaign, and we'll be able to show you that as we look at the picture. So this is our team. It's huge, and I was pretty hesitant about that at first because I know that sometimes you can just get lost, not really have a job to do when there's that many people in a campaign. But all of these people in the green shirts, and even some of them who aren't, are part of the people who came down from the United States. There are some Peruvians, I guess, in green shirts. But so there was different locations that we had for the people who were filtered into the city center, which is where we were based. This is the triage team. Peyton's a nurse. She's a nurse. I think they're all nurses, actually. Could be wrong about that. But they were basically taking people's vitals, blood pressure, things like that, trying to figure out where they needed to go and how they needed to be directed. This is the physical therapy team. Made up of some 4 women. I think all are physical therapists, or maybe 3 of them are. And they helped a number of people. You imagine if there's no health care and these people are poor and haven't gone to the doctor in who knows how long, the kind of cases that you get. And there's some surprising people that walk through the door, and these people have to be faced, have to be challenged with a tremendous number of different things in a wide spectrum. So ojos means eyes, and this is the eye team. And so in Cusco, because the elevation is so high and the air is so thin, the UV index is extremely high. It's like 11 or 12 or something like that, like beyond what I even knew existed. So what happens is people get a lot of cataracts, people have a lot of eye problems. And so whenever the campaign goes down there, they say that always eyes are the most needed medical treatment. And there's 2 optometrists in this group, Jason here and Rick. Both of them are from Alabama. They actually have an optometry practice together. This is the medical team. We know her. This is Nick. He is a 5th-year resident, I believe. He actually speaks Spanish, which was really helpful. Lori helped Megan a lot. She's a nurse practitioner. He is a doctor and a OB, delivers a lot of babies, I think maybe in a rural area, so he does a little bit of everything. Lisa, I don't know what her specialty is. And then Chloe is a physician's assistant. So we got quite a team down there. It's like a little portable hospital. This is a line. I'm not sure which day this was, but this was pretty consistent every single day. So we are actually somewhere over here. The line continues over here, and then you have to go in through this gate to get to the place where we were located. So these were the people that lined up, and they were there really, really early in the morning. That line pretty much looked like that the entire day. We worked from about 7 to 4, 5 o'clock, and I had never worked so hard on a campaign as we worked on this, and that's the reason. There's just so many people who needed help. Another picture of the line. All the people had their eyes dilated before they came to see the optometrist, and so this is Jason, one of the optometrists, just doing some tests, I guess. They also had an area for the kids, and there were several people working in what they called the kids' carnival to basically entertain the kids while their parents were getting treatment. And so the next couple slides, really, I'm just going to fly through pretty quick. I'm not going to do explanation on a lot of them, but it's just pictures of the teams working. and I'll explain a little bit about what each of them were doing. So this is Bethany. She's one of the interns. Oh, I showed you her already, I guess. But she actually acted as one of the translators for a lot of us when when some small Peruvian lady came up to us and wanted to give us at the registration desk her entire medical history. We'd have to call over Bethany, and she'd have to translate for us. This is a pharmacy. There were a couple, I think, maybe one, maybe two pharmacists that were there. There were at least one. And I don't know how they got all these drugs down there, but I think they bought them at the pharmacy there, but you're able to buy a lot more antibiotics and things like that. And so they brought money down and they bought drugs from the drugstore, and they had a whole portable pharmacy going up here on these racks behind them. Physical therapy area. You can notice this boy's leg and some of the scarring right there. I don't think this kid could walk when he came in. If I remember right, he had to be carried in. I don't know exactly what was wrong with his leg, but they were doing their best. This is a registration desk, actually where I sat. Pharmacists unloading drugs. This boy was paralyzed, and they brought him in, and he didn't have a wheelchair, he didn't have a walker, he didn't have anything. His mother actually carried him, and she stood in that line, is my understanding. She stood in the line and held him and carried him all the way as she waited to come in the door. And she came to the registration desk, I remember, and she was just holding him. But he was a happy kid. In X-ray, a man came in. For as much good as you do, you always have one couple people who are ganging the system, right? And so this was kind of one of those cases. We had an older guy came in, just acted like he was in all kinds of agony. And everyone paid a bunch of attention to him because, we thought he was legitimate. He was older. He claimed he couldn't walk, put any pressure on his leg, and he had this giant bandage around it. And they took it off, and they realized that it didn't really seem like it was that bad. But every time they tried to stand him up, he just acted like, oh, he's going to die. And so they actually gave him a wheelchair, and he left. And they found him later on the street, walking down the road. And he didn't have the wheelchair anymore. And so the physical therapist, I think, that gave him the wheelchair was pretty bummed about that, because he might have went and sold it. Who knows what he did with it? But you're going to have a couple of those, and it's just part of. Anytime you do good, you're going to have people like that. 2 optometrists. This is where they worked. This was their office for a week, and that's about as big as it was. Not a whole lot of light. There was paper up on the windows because they needed it to be dark to use their instruments to look into people's eyes, and so they were kind of in this closet for the whole time. I don't know how old this lady is, but she's old, and I think the sun there makes people more wrinkly, because you'll see some people and you're like, you have to be 200 years old, and they're they're 70 or something like that. Not really that old, but man, they look like it. Now this guy was he was just old, and he couldn't walk or anything like that. We came in and we thought for sure he wanted to see the medicine team or the physical therapy team. And he says, no, I just want to see the eye doctor. And so that's where he went after they wheeled him in. Saw a couple kids with Down syndrome. And I think it's particularly challenging in this country because of Ryan, one of the missionaries there, told me that there's a real stigma against people that have mental illness. It's not looked on compassionately or as compassionately as we do here a lot of times. There's not as many programs or assistances for people who have children like that, and a lot of them end up in the adoption system and foster care, whatever kind of system they have down there. But this boy came in and he just kind of went around with his mother. There's not a whole lot that we were able to do for him. Gave him some vitamins, I think, but it'd be extraordinarily hard in a country like that to have that challenge. This is Drew. He's one of the eye guys from Alabama. So everyone would sit in this line, and they would have their eyes dilated, and it takes 15, 20 minutes. And so they all have sunglasses on. There's another picture. And then he would look in this machine. I'm not sure what it is, but it would show him something about their eyes. And some of the equipment that they brought down was extremely valuable, and so they had to be very, very careful with it. what is his name? I can't remember what his name is, but he works for Polishing the Pulpit. He works for House to House, and he works on the eye team. These are all eyeglasses in these boxes back here that they've had donated over the years. There's just thousands of them. And he created a web-based cloud application that would basically allow them to keep inventory of all the prescriptions and all the glasses that they had available. So by gender, by prescription, by, are they bifocals, trifocals, what are they? And he runs it. He's got this little, this is his iPad, and then he runs it off of a mobile hotspot and keeps track of all of the inventory. And so this is no shabby operation he's got going, because they see about 300 people a day. They try to fit about 300 people a day for glasses, which is an insane amount of people. So they have to be able to keep track of that. Kids' story time. These are actually people waiting outside in the morning. So the medical team sat here. There's two of the doctors. They also sat over here. There's Megan and Lori, the other nurse practitioner. Pharmacy was over here. And this is all in kind of the city center. I had to put this guy on here. This is a Make America Great Again hat in Peru. This is Brandon. This is the registration desk. This is where I work. So we saw everybody come in. And this is Brandon. He's from West Virginia, actually. If any of you know Brent Gallagher, he's a preacher over there. He attends his congregation. And this is a very traditional, you see this on a lot of the older ladies, real traditional when you think of Peruvian people, or you see the movie Coco, I think we compared it to. It kind of looks like that. They all wear these hats. They all have jet black hair, pigtails, but down the back, and then they wear these skirts. And they always have on like 10 layers of clothing. It doesn't matter how hot it is. This is the eye exam. I did this for a while. Basically, you point at the letter, and they have to read it. You have to be really qualified to do this job. This is actually one of the men who they're training to be a preacher of the congregation. And real nice guy. I guess he's maybe about 30. He did some of the speaking, did a real good job. Whoa. On the way out, they got toothbrushes, toothpaste, washcloths, I think, and some other little things. There's me using all of my training. So this is how they carry their babies, at least a lot of them. And their babies are always in like 16 layers as well. And they always have hats on. It doesn't, again, it doesn't matter how hot it is. And we were told that it has something to do with a belief that if you get too cold, you'll get sick. And so, that there has to be a balance of the temperatures of the children, otherwise they, can get sick. And so they have them in all of these layers. And if they don't carry them on their back like this, we saw a couple people carrying their children in like a just a bag, like a tote bag. And they'd be carrying it on their arm like this, you might do with groceries or something like that, and they'd set it on the table, and they'd pull out a child, and we're just like, but a little bit different than our way. But they're not going to have strollers on the cobblestone roads, and so that makes sense. You'd have to have the lungs. You'd have to have amazing lungs to play soccer there. I don't know how long she lasted when she was playing, but they do love soccer. That's Lori, the nurse practitioner. Translator, she spent a lot of time in the United States and actually went to Freed-Hardeman, and now she's down there. That's actually where she's originally from, but she translated, speaks real good English and Spanish. This is Brandon, the guy I worked with. This is his friend, the llama. If you've ever seen Emperor's New Groove, the Disney movie, that's where we were. These are all the people waiting to get their eyes. No, this is... these are all the people waiting to get their eyes dilated. But this is when you see this kid rubbing his eyes right here, and this lady like staring blankly into space. They ran out of sunglasses to give to the people who had their eyes dilated. And for anyone who has ever had their eyes dilated before, like you can't look into the light, and it was bright in that room. And so all these people are kind of struggling. the mayor came to see us. So this was good publicity for him. He walks around and he says, I brought you guys all this health care. And there's this videographer who's filming him there. And he gives a speech. And they actually came back later in the week, and I'll show you that in a little bit. I put this picture in here, and there's another picture because some of the women, especially there, are so short. Actually, I'm not sure that I saw anyone taller than me over there, but some of the older ladies are so tiny. Kids Carnival, there's Batman. They had face painting. The line outside again. Let me tell you about some of the things that Megan was asked to treat while she was there. They have some, let me tell you about some of their beliefs as far as medicine. They have some interesting ones. Some of which, she had a lady that came to her and she said, my son is having seizures. And so Megan asked, what are you doing to treat the seizures? And she said, I'm killing this is a lady we heard about, not that she saw, sorry. I'm killing I'm killing a blackbird, and I'm giving my child its blood to drink to fix these seizures. So very superstitious, kind of almost like making a witch's potion kind of way to heal things. And they have another belief that eggs have healing powers. And so if you pass an egg over a sick child, or you break an egg and you rub the yolk and the egg white on the injury, that it'll suck out poisons or it'll heal the wound. And so they do this a lot of times. And the preacher's kid actually went to a babysitter who was Peruvian, and he was sick at the time. And the babysitter brought her son back, and she said, he's all better now. I passed an egg over him. And she was worried that she had done some voodoo ritual on her child. Another interesting fact is that they eat guinea pigs over there, which is actually, they have in the big cathedral that I showed you earlier, they have a rendition or a painting of the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. But there's an edit made to it, and on the plate in front of Jesus, there's actually a guinea pig that is being prepared for the Last Supper. I was told by someone that these hats all have a meaning. And so these older ladies, they're Quechuan women, and based on the hat style, the hat color, and then the ribbon color, it all means something different about what tribe they're from. Are they a widow? Are they married? It can mean many different things. This was one of the Bible studies that was going on. And so when they walked in the door and they went to registration where we were, there was a check mark that said, do you want to have a Bible study when this is done? And there were some people who worked, this lady worked all week. She had Bible studies all week. And there were people who worked in the back. So when they were done with their medical care, then they went to this table and they had Bible studies with them. That lady's like 4'5". There's Nathan. These are braces that were brought in and donated for the physical therapy team. This is a nice delicacy that we found in a restaurant. This is a chocolate pod, and then inside the chocolate pod there's chocolate ice cream, and then there's like 3 kinds of chocolate on top of the chocolate ice cream. So that was pretty good. Coffee, chocolate, and coca leaves are kind of their biggest produce. And the coca leaf, they actually put in their tea. It's the same leaf that cocaine is made out of, but unless it's refined and goes through that process, it's not toxic or whatever. Plenty of dogs walking through the clinic. One thing I noticed that's different about India or Costa Rica is that the strays in Peru are all big dogs. They're all like everything breeds with a German Shepherd or something over there. And they're all big, except this pug. This was actually being taken care of by a lady, but it had the cone of shame on it. People waiting in line. So these are all people who are waiting for medical care. These are all people who are waiting for eye care. And it looked like this all day, and they cycled as fast as they possibly could to get all these people through. Here's Ryan, the missionary. busy place. They had to hang a tarp. This was all a glass wall, and the sun would just beat in on the doctors and nurses that were sitting there, and it was really, really hot, so they had to hang a tarp there, and that's why everything's blue all the time. I almost brought this hat back for my dad, but I didn't figure he would wear it on Ohio State's campus. These women are all Quechua women. That's why they have the traditional dress, and they don't speak Spanish, or at least they speak limited Spanish. They speak that Inca language. All right, now this is the mayor. He came back at the end of our campaign to pin us all with medals, and so that's what he's doing. He gave a big speech, and they brought in a big amplifier or microphone, and he gave this great speech about all that we had done, and he has his rainbow. There's a big giant golden sun down here on the end of his medallion, and he's giving us all pens, and this is what the pen looked like. It's kind of hard to see, but it's actually the coat of arms for Cusco. On our last day, we got the chance to go to Machu Picchu, and I just say that if you ever get the chance to go, you should go. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world, and it's just astounding. So this is Llama up here. This is me. This is Machu Picchu. Probably looks familiar from the pictures. And we got to hike up to the Sun Gate. So Machu Picchu is right there. And we walked all the way up this side of this mountain up to what's called the Sun Gate. And there's no guardrails on this trail. There's no protection whatsoever. Like, you could fall off and die, no problem. And it's quite an adventure. But it's an old Inca trail that was used to travel to all these places. Now, this is our Bible study table. And so we treated, I say we, but I didn't treat anybody. We saw 2,076 patients in a week's time, in 4 days, Monday through Thursday. And that was like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And but I think, obviously the goal of this mission is what's going on at this table. And so there are Peruvians all sitting on the back side of this table, and they're the ones who facilitate the Bible studies. And then all these people are people who signed up to have a study. And so we had over 150 Bible studies, which I think is just, a tremendous result from the work that was being done. And they follow up on these studies afterwards. And so hopefully those are still going on, still progressing. And they've said that in the years past, the campaign has been a big influence on people coming to the church. This is actually a little bit later. This is a man that I met there. This is after we had left, but he was baptized. You notice their baptistry, they got some plywood, 2x4s there, particle board thrown together and a tarp on the inside, and hey, it works. So this was after he was baptized. One thing I think I forgot to mention with the missionaries is that they all speak fluent Spanish. They're all from, Tennessee, Alabama. None of them, all but one of them, didn't know Spanish before they went down there. And their idea was basically, we're going to go down there, we're going to immerse ourselves, and if we can't speak the language, we're not going to be able to assimilate. We're not going to be able to become a community with these people. And so every single one of them, they span from the ages of probably 24 to the oldest couple is probably in their 40s, and they went down there and they all learned now, so they all speak fluent Spanish, which I think makes just a tremendous difference as far as their ability to build a church in that area, especially being full-time. This section is nothing but cute children, and then we'll come to the end. This is all the kids' carnival pictures. This is Luke. He is the son of Ryan and Sarah, the missionaries we just mentioned and saw in those pictures. He's 2 years old. He was born in Peru and been raised in Peru, and he speaks both English and Spanish. And then there's some baby llamas. Oh. So a few other facts that I had that I'll mention just very briefly, and then we'll finish up. Let's see what I missed. Transportation there is very cheap. It costs about $2 to take a taxi anywhere in the city, which is nice and not like here. So there's not necessarily a need for a car, but the city is very compact. It's not real spread out. It all sits down in a valley, and so you can take a taxi anywhere and get just about anywhere you need to go, and use your broken Spanish to do it. They did not have a dentist this year. They've had a dentist in the past. So I guess they had a local dentist in the past. And the dentist's solution when you are in Peru is just that if your tooth hurts or if you have a cavity, you just pull your tooth. So one of the guys there was telling me they had just a bucket of teeth that were sitting in a tent during the one of the previous campaigns. And so I was kind of glad that I didn't have to see that. I think one thing that's particularly hard is when you see people that you can't help, and that there's nothing that you can do. You have limited ability, obviously. You can't do CT scans. You can't do. There's so much you can't do because you're just kind of a set-up shop in another country, and you see people come in, they're paralyzed, or they have a disease you can't treat, or they tell you they have something that that's probably the hardest thing. Especially with these parents who have children and you know that they're suffering, and you're there with a promise of help, but you just can't give them what they want. I think that's particularly difficult. But I think one thing that Megan would probably say is that it's rewarding to treat people who actually need your help. I know a lot of times she has mentioned to me that the healthcare here, you get people who they're sick because maybe they don't take care of themselves, or maybe they're just hanging out at the hospital because they want a bed to sleep in at night, and they're not necessarily people who have real medical needs, true needs. These are people who have true needs. These are people who haven't been to the hospital or the doctor in years and are suffering with all kinds of things. A couple of the medical issues she saw was that she wanted there was a couple women who needed or wanted treatment for menopause, and they wanted her to take that away. And there was also people who said that their lower back was sweaty when they had on 15 layers of clothing. And there was another person that she mentioned to me, said that she is in a speech class, and whenever she gets up to give her speech, she can't remember her speech. So she was wondering if there was any kind of medication that would help her get over that problem. So, I was hesitant to go on this trip, and the reason that I was hesitant was because I didn't feel like I was going to be really of value. I was discouraged initially by a couple facts. Number one, that there were so many people going on the trip. I didn't want this to just be some kind of like spring break, everybody goes on a giant trip together, and it's under the banner of mission, but you're not really doing anything good. I didn't want it to be that, and I suspected that it might be that, and I was definitely wrong about that. So that was one of my hesitations. The other hesitation was that I figured out we weren't going to be doing the Bible studies. The Peruvians were going to be doing the Bible studies. And the third reason was because I have no medical expertise at all. And so, I thought, I'm just not sure I'm going to be of any value on this trip, and I'm not sure it's worth going. And Megan kind of encouraged me to go, and I'm glad that I did. And the reason for it is actually, I learned a little bit myself while I was giving a devotional in the Sunday evening service there. If you have your Bible, turn to Acts chapter 3. Well, actually, why don't you turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul gives that talk about not everyone is the hand, not everyone is the foot, not everyone is the eye. There are some members who have lesser jobs, but they're no less important for the body. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12, he says, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body. Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we're all made to drink out of one Spirit. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not the hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not the eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the senses of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the senses of smell? So I looked at my situation in this mission trip, and I said, I'm not going to be the hand on this trip. I'm not going to be on the medical side. I'm not going to be on the Bible study side. I'm not going to be the hand. I'm not going to be the eye. I don't want to go. And I was wrong when I thought that way, because you can be a vital member of a team and not be in the spotlight or not have what you believe are the big roles all the time. And I saw that from Acts chapter 3. If you look at Acts chapter 3, so Peter's just finished his great sermon in Acts chapter 2. And now him and John are going to the temple, and it says, at the hour of prayer, this is verse 1, at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour, a man lame from birth was being carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, that is called the Beautiful Gate, to ask alms of those who entered the temple. Seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, he asked to receive alms, and Peter directed his gaze at him, and did John, and said, look at us. And he fixed his attention on them, expecting to receive something from them, but Peter said, I have no silver or gold, but what I do have I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And so Peter and John go into the temple and they heal this lame man. And we know that the purpose of miracles wasn't just to, heal individuals physically. That was a great benefit of them, but that wasn't the major purpose. The major purpose was to glorify God by bringing attention to him and verifying the words of God. So what happens immediately after this is that a great crowd gathers, and where is that? Oh, verse 11. While he clung, this lame man, clung to Peter and John, all the people, utterly astounded, ran together to them in the portico called Solomon's. And then, after that, Peter preaches this, another one of his great sermons, and many people are brought to Christ because of what he did. So I began to think about that in my context there in Peru, as far as, the role that I had to play. For the Peruvians, we did for them what they couldn't do for themselves. This is a growing and maturing church. And they ought to be at a point, and we want them to be at a point where they can do their own studies. Because when we leave in a week, we're not going to be there anymore. And we're not going to be the people interfacing with those people. It's going to be the Peruvians. They're the church that's there. And we want them to be self-sustaining. And so ultimately, that's what we want. We want them to be able to do that. What they can't do for themselves, though, is what we brought. They can't bring that medical care. They can't get those drugs. They don't have the specialty as far as the doctors and the ability to bring the crowd. You see, Peter in and of himself had both of those abilities. But today, and for that circumstance, they didn't. And so we each played a part. One was a hand, one was an eye, one was an ear. And so while we brought in the multitudes with the lines outside and healed them physically, the Peruvians were there on the other side of things, healing and working on the spiritual side. And so I realized that even though I was on the registration and all I was doing was, shuffling paperwork pretty much, that I played a vital role in that process. And without everybody being part of that, the picture of Acts chapter 3, physical healing, spiritual healing, wouldn't have been complete. And so we worked hard doing the work of the lesser members, at least I did. And Megan worked as one of the greater members, and it all worked out for the glory of God in tremendous ways. And so I learned a lot from that trip, both from the Peruvians and from my experiences. And I thank the congregation for sending us, and all the people individually who gave us money and offered us money even after we had raised it. But it was a good work, and if you ever have the chance to go down there, maybe some of our medical people could go down there next year. Tremendous opportunity and definitely worth it. Amazing people as well from the United States who went down there and gave up their time to do that. And so, with those thoughts in mind, we'll offer the invitation. And obviously our goal is spiritual healing. And Jesus is the only one who offers that. And so if you've heard the word, you believe that it's true, and you are willing to repent of your sins and confess the name of Christ and be baptized into him, the grace that can heal you is offered to you, and you can take part in that this evening. Could be that you need prayers, need the grace of Christ and forgiveness, as John tells us that he will give to us. If you have that need, you can come as we stand and sing.